Steven Spielberg's film Schindler's List, with its chilling portrayal of the Holocaust, is the odds-on favorite to win the Oscar tomorrow night. And yet for years there's been a strange constellation of individuals who claim the Holocaust, the extermination of about 6 million Jews and millions of others by the Nazis during World War II, that the Holocaust never happened. Who are these so-called deniers or revisionists who've managed to keep spreading that message in North America and Europe, though most of them lack any serious credentials as historians, and no serious historians give them any credence? Many of them are simply popularizing the speculative theories of others. One such individual who's made a career of denying the Holocaust is a German-born Canadian, a photo retoucher by trade, named Ernst Zundel. What you're saying is that the Holocaust, as we know it, as we in the West have learned about it over a period of the last half-century, simply did not take place.
Not anywhere in the grotesque numbers and figures and methods, as was, for instance, recently displayed by the film Schindler's List. It's totally inaccurate.
Totally inaccurate.
Inaccurate.
The number of Jews who died under the Nazis, says Zundel and the other deniers, was nothing like 6 million.
I put the figure at the lower 300,000 range.
That's all?
That's right, yeah.
And they died of what?
Illnesses, disease, mistreatment, some of medical experiments performed on them, overwork.
Nobody was gassed?
No.
But if only 300,000 Jews died, then what happened to the rest of the 6 million who were missing after the war? Zundel says they were secretly spirited off to the Soviet Union, to Israel, and the United States.
Unregistered. They were just allowed into the United States.
And this is all hidden from the American people?
For the time being, yes.
And all of the testimony we've heard through the years by literally thousands of survivors, talking of everything from death camps to execution squads to gassings, that's all made up.
It is a rumor that, like any other rumor, grew as more and more people prospered as a result of the rumor.
So all of us are caught up in a great fraud.
A deception, a great deception.
Perpetrated by what you call the Holocaust
lobby.
And who benefits from this lobby?
Israel has immensely benefited from it because the state of Israel's budget at one time, up until quite recently in the 80s, used to be 30–40% guilt money from Germany.
Ernst Zundel has succeeded in peddling his propaganda with films like this on several U.S. cable stations and by shortwave radio around the world.
I'm Ernst Zundel of the Voice of Freedom program. Are you tired of listening to the same old, stale, politically correct viewpoint on history and politics?
Where does the money come from for all this?
It comes basically from donations from people, from bequests. People who die leave me something in their will. But most of it comes from little donations by little people of many different nationalities, including Jews, who are tired of this World War II Holocaust hate propaganda.
And what is your annual take?
Money-wise? Oh boy, only the IRS knows that.
Even a nationally syndicated TV talk show like Montel Williams has made room for the deniers.
We're talking about the Holocaust and whether or not it happened or it didn't happen.
One of the guests, Mark Weber, a white supremacist who now heads up something called the Institute for Historical Review. They publish seemingly scholarly tracts, most of them concerned with the Holocaust.
Every Jewish person who, in the Second World War who died of whatever cause is considered, quote, a victim of the Holocaust. That is, Jews who died even in Allied bombing attacks.
No, I'm Jewish. I'm also an atheist.
But the most improbable of all the deniers is Californian David Cole, a 23-year-old Jewish high school dropout.
We feel, for example, that the building in Auschwitz that you go to that is said to be the gas chamber was, in fact, the morgue. And I have to say, from my own point of view, that the evidence saying that there were no gas chambers is a lot stronger than any of the evidence that can be presented saying there were.
All right, well, then let's stop there and take a break. Is it myth or is it truth? We'll find out when we come back.
We wanted to question David Cole, who visited the death camp at Auschwitz along with Ernst Zundel. We wanted to ask him about the basis for his views, but he declined our request for an interview.
Hi, is this advertising?
So did another Californian, Bradley Smith, though he had earlier given an interview to CBS's 48 Hours.
My job is to bring about open debate on the only historical event in the history of the West that's taboo.
A former stevedore and construction worker, Smith is currently pushing to get the deniers' message out to young people on college campuses around the country by buying ads in college newspapers. Those ads question whether the Holocaust ever took place.
Now it's time to demonstrate that the Germans exterminated Jews in gas chambers. If we can't demonstrate it, human decency requires that we stop saying it.
And predictably, his attempt to place those ads usually provokes headline-making controversy on campus, which is just what the deniers want. They want to portray themselves as martyrs fighting for free speech. In one form or another, their ads have now been published on 31 American college campuses. One institution recently targeted Queens College in New York. The editors of the weekly student newspaper, The Quad, received a check from Bradley Smith for $230 to run an ad. The ad's message? That the Holocaust Museum in Washington is a fraud, lacking any solid proof that the massive extermination of the Jews by the Nazis in gas chambers ever took place. Queens College would seem to be an unlikely spot to try to place an ad like that. There are 18,000 students here, almost a third of them Jewish. They even have several courses on the Holocaust. And the majority of the campus paper's editorial board, which had to decide whether or not to run the ad, are Jewish.
I actually had a great-grandparents who did die in the Holocaust.
20-year-old executive editor Andy Wallenstein.
It's a matter of editorial responsibility. Do we want to print this?
One of the experts the student editors at Queens consulted about whether to publish the ad was Professor Deborah Lipstadt of Emory University. Her advice? No way.
The ad creates two sides to an issue on which there is no two sides. There are many things to debate, but whether it happened or not, there's no debate.
These deniers, you say, have become a kind of a glue that holds the radical right together?
Today they will tell you it didn't happen because they've figured out that it's the Holocaust, to be only partially facetious, that gives Nazism its really bad name. So if you want to make fascism, if you want to make National Socialism a viable contemporary political alternative, you got to do away with the Holocaust.
You've been identified by the Interior Ministry in Germany as one of Germany's most important suppliers of radical right and neo-Nazi propaganda material.
Totally untrue. I do not publish neo-Nazi literature.
Wait a minute. Your publishing house in Toronto has sold tapes of Hitler's speeches,
Right.
copies of Nazi-sponsored films, cassettes of music from the Third Reich, including a selection of Hitler's favorites, stormtrooper songs and marches. You don't send neo-Nazis?
Mr. Wallace, no, that's not neo-Nazi, that's Nazi stuff.
Oh, I see.
That's a big difference. And,
Ernst Zundel insists that he believes that Germany and Adolf Hitler have been taking a bad rap.
Hitler lost the war, that's why we're picking on him. Hitler had his foibles and his warts. He was not the monster that the world made him out to be.
He was not.
No, he was not. And he had, excuse me.
His foibles and warts, what were they?
His foibles and warts, he didn't particularly like Jews.
That
was one of them. That was one of them, yeah. And he had this thing about racial purity.
We're asked by Holocaust deniers, show us proof that the gas chambers existed.
Michael Berenbaum is research director of the Holocaust Museum in Washington. He was invited to speak at Queens College as the debate continued there about that ad from the deniers.
One of the things that you have to understand is the Holocaust is the most documented crime in human history.
Why?
In a very real way, the Germans were proud of what they were doing. They wanted to document it. They wanted to proclaim it.
Proud because?
Because they thought they were doing the world a favor in getting rid of the Jews. They thought that this was essential to the salvation of the German nation.
And what about the charge that there were no gas chambers and no use of the deadly gas called Zyklon B to exterminate Jews?
Nobody was
Gas chambers did not exist.
Not for the extermination of people, only for lice.
We can show you the systematic bills of lading for Zyklon B, the instructions for the use of Zyklon B in gassing, the accounts of the perpetrators who put the Zyklon B in, and the accounts of the Sonderkommando who witnessed the gassing process.
And according to Berenbaum and scores of other expert Jews and non-Jews who have studied the Holocaust, there is no question that the number of Jews killed by the Nazis was indeed about 6 million.
Look, we can list name by name, place of deportation, place of destruction, village by village, city by city, name by name, the death of millions of people.
And as for documenting Nazi determination at the highest levels to carry out the Holocaust,
we have the speech of Himmler indicating that this was a chapter of German history never to be written.
Wait.
But one of the proudest moments in German history.
Extermination never took place. Heinrich Himmler was not in charge of exterminating anyone.
No.
In a speech to his SS generals, Poland, October 4th, 1943, Heinrich Himmler said, quote, "The Jewish race is being exterminated. We had the duty towards our people to destroy this people that wanted to destroy us. We can talk about it openly here. We must never talk about it publicly. This is an unwritten, never to be written, glorious page in our history."
Give me the source.
This is a forgery, you think?
I want to see proof, page numbers, documents, originals.
If we can show you proof, that'll change your mind.
Yeah, it would.
Well, we were able to provide that proof. Robert Wolfe of the National Archives in Washington gave us a copy of the original tape and transcripts of that speech made by the Nazis themselves, plus notes for that speech in Himmler's own handwriting. When we told Zundel, he claimed they were all forgeries, the way he dismisses all documentation of the Holocaust.
The wonderful thing about Zundel is that he's not bound by any historic information. If it's a forgery, then you'd have to forge the historic accounts that were detailed of the various ways in which people were killed. You'd have to forge the testimony that took place in the aftermath of the war at the trials.
But you knew that there was a policy that aimed at the extermination of the Jews.
You'd have to forge the films. My God, it would have taken thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in order to achieve this type of forgery.
The results obviously...
The editors at Queens College heard all of this from Berenbaum, and still, by a vote of 7-2, they decided to publish the denier's ad. Not by itself, but with an editorial and a number of articles attacking those who would deny that the Holocaust took place.
Why are you going ahead with it?
Basically, the reason behind it is to expose and dismiss what seems like innocent, harmless scholarship as the manipulative, hateful garbage that it is. I mean, people have to know that it's out there.
Well, then why give it room in your paper?
Because it's going to get out there anyway. And who knows, maybe it'll appear as a neo-Nazi leaflet on a street corner somewhere. At least when we print it, doing it on our own terms with an editorial, people will know how to assess it for what it is.
The editors also decided to remove Bradley Smith's name and address from the bottom of the ad and to return his check for $230.
I don't want his blood money on my hands.
So these young people who run the Quad, the newspaper, they're dupes, they're fools.
They're young.
Professor Sam Heilman teaches at Queens College. His parents survived the Holocaust. They were on Oskar Schindler's list. And even though the newspaper was going to attack the ad, still he deplored the fact the ad was going to be published at all. Ernst Zundel, you know what he says about all this? He says he finds the public is indeed more receptive to their message, especially the young. They're ready to question anything, he says.
Because every young person thinks that the world begins with himself, that everything that happened before is only a story. The campus is the place where you are going to have a long-term effect. These guys are banking on the future. They're sowing seeds.
Right?
Copies of Nazi-sponsored films, cassettes of music from the Third Reich, including a selection of Hitler's favorites, stormtrooper songs and marches.